Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
And
for having me. I appreciate it as well.
I've known you and your wife for many years. Your wife is a psychologist,
Mhm.
tell us about what you do. I've been treating ADD for I don't know my whole career, 30 some years now. Tell me what you do. What do you do for work?
Yeah, so I'm an ADHD coach, and Melissa, she's my wife. Therapy, she's on the therapy end, and I'm on the coaching end of things. And we created a coaching business called ADHD Collective.
Mhm.
And so it's I do ADHD coaching, and then we also have a co-working membership where a bunch of ADHDers work together in real time, um, 5 days a week, or every weekday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's through the membership. And yeah, we get stuff done together and learn about how to work with ADHD.
So to get specific with me, with what are the things you do with your clients?
Yeah, well, where to start here? That's a
I
well,
know.
I'll start with with the co-working. I'll kind of give the gist of the co-working, and there's like a method and a madness
Right.
behind that to address a lot of the symptoms that can come up with ADHD, and primarily like that the um, the inability to follow through, or chronic, that being a chronic issue and just wreaking havoc for ADHDers, and especially in the wake of kind of COVID. That was like a defining moment too, where
Yeah.
ADHD all just kind of came up to the surface. But
Anything mental health related, mood related, depression, everything got worse in the pandemic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it would see, yes. So that is actually the co-working. I was dabbling with this co-working idea because I literally just was the issue where we plan out a week with coaching, for instance, and it's one thing to identify what to do throughout the week and make it clear and make sure it's the priority things, and that's really important. But the how is just like that's just as maybe even more important for ADHDers. And at least that's what I found. It's like we'd set up a plan, and then some of it would get done, and some of it would just go undone. And so kind of created this idea of working in real time together. And these sessions kind of grew out of try wanting an answer, trying to like experimenting with strategies to kind of address that the how problem, like the where it comes to execution and that performance, and just you can know what to do, but you don't do it still, And so I know that one myself. I have ADHD, but that was kind of it was I was experimenting around with that like in 2017, 2018 with these sessions, and kind of came up with this technique to address some of that. And what an ADHD co-working session looks like right now is a bunch of ADHDers will get on a Zoom together, so it's all virtual. And then the way that we work is we use the Pomodoro technique, so we work in 25-minute bursts. And before everybody goes around, or before we actually get into our work, everybody goes around and makes a goal for whatever they're working on for that first 25 minutes. So kind of gives something to aim for, and you say that goal out loud. So there's kind of this accountability, like other people are witnessing, and they know that you're going to be working on this thing. And then I share a timer with 25 minutes, and everybody just mutes themselves. Some people keep the camera on, some people turn it off, whatever's more conducive to getting work done. And then we just work until the timer goes off. And then we come back and we assess. We say briefly, like, how'd it go? What'd you notice? And there's a whole world that comes up when people go out for their work.
So, yeah.
And all of that stuff comes up in those sessions in it. And we just repeat that structure for 2 hours. And we do that every single weekday. And that's kind of the method and the technique.
Do you actually ever go to like people's workplaces and like watch what they're doing, and do you ever do that type of thing?
I haven't done that. We used to, when we first started in the very beginning, we would go into people's homes, but that was actually,
Hmm.
it's not sustainable actually. So we stopped doing that. But yeah, essentially you're kind of, it's weird. You're kind of working out loud with other people at the same time. And it's kind of a weird experience or strange or not common, but uh, something about that way of working kind of addresses a whole like kind of a bunch of different executive functions that are impacted by ADHD.
Right.
And yeah. So
I talk about people. I mean, I treated a lot of ADD for many years, and I say like schoolwork life. In other words, people treat when they're in school, and they think, well, I
yeah,
gotta do it because I'm in school. But now that I'm out of school, I'm fine now. I don't have to treat anymore. I was like, well, how about work? And they go, well,
oh yeah,
yeah, and then how about and when I say life, well, how about relationship? Because it's not only the work and it's also communication skills uh,
hmm
in relationships.
yeah,
So that's why I tell people it's really important to treat it for so many different reasons. And
hmm
it's usually, I mean, it's typically a chronic diagnosis. You don't just cure it someday. I mean, it
yeah,
does. I mean, treating it with ADD medication doesn't cure it; it treats it. It doesn't actually. Oh, you take it for a year and you stop it. Oh, everything's fine. It's an ongoing issue. It's also genetic. It's genetically based, and
yeah,
it's very difficult to sometimes trace it because people say, "Well, I don't think my mom and dad had it." Well, who who are you? Who do you act more like, look more like? And yeah, I guess maybe my mom was kind of scattered, and yeah, I guess my dad was. You can kind of see it, but yeah, I say, well, they weren't diagnosed back then, because they didn't even know
right.
it. But when you start to see patterns and you start to see like, okay, now I can kind of see what was going on with my mom or dad or my
Oh
grandparents,
yeah,
my siblings or whatever. Um,
yep.
but I also explain to people that ADD has nothing to do with intelligence, and like in
Mm.
yourself, you're successfully treated. Well, you have a really good doctor who treats it, so
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah.
no, but I tell people, so for example, some people do fine, early on in school. And I mean, some kids are really obvious. The hyperactive kids, the kids who just cannot sit still, they're always getting in trouble. Those are the kids who get the most attention, it seems, because the
Right.
teachers, they go sent to the principals, and then they finally get an evaluation, they're diagnosed, and then maybe they're treated, or maybe the parents like, oh, I don't want to put my kids on drugs. I'm not going to drug my kids. So sometimes it's
Right.
actually the parent that stands in the way
Mm.
of the treatment because they're like, my kid's too young for that.
hmm
So then the kid struggles, and struggles with homework, struggles with assignments. But there's also the kids that are really intelligent who, with
mm
good work ethic and with parents who force it and they make them do the homework as soon as they get home. Now, sometimes they get by because they're structured
Yeah.
and they can do it. But then what happens is as things get more difficult, middle school, high school, from high school to college, from college to grad
Oh
school,
yeah.
every level that you go, it gets more difficult and more
Yeah.
difficult, and
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
and if you don't treat it, it's going to catch up to you eventually.
Yes. I say, I mean, I can't tell you how many times like the big events that kind of incite this like the symptoms to really come raring is like that transition to college is a big one. It's like the first time that the kid is doing it on their own, so they don't have those structures that they're used to in high school, or maybe a parent that is actually helping. They aren't even thinking about that till they're absolutely alone. They don't have those parents, and now it's up to them. That's when they find out. It's like, geez, like, oh God. And maybe with an increase of responsibility, maybe that that could be a typical mechanism. That's what at least I see kind of my language around it. And
Yeah,
and then the other one is having a kid is a big one too. It's like, okay, you're doing all these coping mechanisms and working. You're keeping your head above water and you're kind of coping with those symptoms.
yeah.
And then then drop a baby in the mix and and then everything goes awry. That's a common one that people reach out. Um, and then the last one, kind of what you were saying is, I also can't tell you how many times that a parent is like that I've heard that story of like, well, the child is getting diagnosed, and through that process and learning about their child, they're like, geez, that sounds like a lot like me. And then they for the first time have considered that maybe they have ADHD.
Yeah.
That's a common one.
Very common, very common. And then I see the parent, and I see the sibling, and then they see it. Oh my gosh, this his sister or brother or whatever. Yeah, you
Yeah.
treat one person, then you all of a sudden identify like no wonder I've struggled. No wonder I struggle at work. No wonder, and so and when you were mentioning high school to college, so you get away from parents and structure, and now you're partying probably a bit more than
Oh yeah.
and that
Oh yeah.
you have more distractions in college and so yeah so in my new book, the Corona Protocol, I tell three. I have in chapter 4 is on ADD, and I tell the
Mm,
story of a girl I saw in when she was I saw her since middle school, high school. She was one of those. Yeah, she started struggling in high school, but she was like a 4.4 GPA. She never got a B kind of person. Um, you know,
mm,
and the parents didn't understand that. Like, well, she did so well in elementary school and middle school. I don't understand why she's struggling. Well, she had
right.
AD. So treated her, did great. She ended up going to USC where I went, pre-med,
Mm,
biochemistry pre-med. I didn't see her for a few years, and then, well, actually, she came back to me the beginning of her junior year, and she said, "I'm really struggling." I go, "What? I thought you must have seen a doctor up in LA. What's?" She goes, "No, it was a pride thing. I wanted to prove I didn't need to take that. I could succeed without it." And she's not doing well.
mm,
And so I put her back on what I had her on, and now she's doing great again. And thank
mm.
hopefully it won't keep her from getting into med school when they start to see the improvement in the grades. But yeah, but that's an example of someone who obviously she's highly intelligent, so that wasn't the issue. But she has ADD, and no matter how intelligent you are, to get that intelligence to be able to focus and get things done, that's the trick,
Oh yeah.
and
Yes. I've seen, yeah, seeing that. And it's like my 20s. This explains my 20s to me. When I was diagnosed when Melissa was going through studying being a psychologist and learned about ADHD when she was learning in school, and then came home, was like, oh my God, I think this might be you, like uh and then that process of diagnosis, actually, it was that was very positive for me in one sense, but I don't know, I kind of wrestle with this. I got to go back and forth, but the diagnosis itself provided handles for me to understand what's going on, and that was like a relief, because without that, you're just like, what the hell is wrong? Why can't I just fill in the blank? Why can't I do this thing that everyone else seems to be able to do?
right.
And having a lot of passion and a lot of ideas, and it was just scary at 30, because it was like the first time that I had like a chunk of my life to look back on, like a whole decade. It was like one of the first times I can look back, and it kind of scared me, of like, of how much I wanted for my life, and how much never happened. And the disappointment was like, oh, this is just so. It was so. I felt so much shame and disappointment, and yeah. So just to understand that, hey, there's just to get handles for the way that my brain works, so I can go and find ways to work with it,
Mhm.
was like, that's a gift. And um I kind of like, undiagnosed ADHD is a nightmare, but you can work with it if,
Yeah.
once you have the handles and understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, and the risks of not treating, and unfortunately, like I said, sometimes parents stand in the way where they just doesn't seem right to be on a stimulant, or they talk to their friends and the friends say, "Oh, don't do that." So they get bad advice. What happens sometimes with teenagers, though, if you don't treat it, is there's a higher risk of addiction. Uh,
Mm,
there's
right,
self-esteem drops down to a higher risk of depression, higher risk of anxiety, because their self-esteem is down. They feel stupid. Why can't my friends can do this? Why can't I do this? They feel less than, and it's a sad situation because it's something that's so easily treatable. But
mm,
unless someone steps in and says, or sometimes it's a teacher, or sometimes it's a doctor, or sometimes it's you tell the parents, you know what, your son, your daughter, really needs help here. And sometimes, and I often get people coming in and they're reluctant, and I talk
right,
about it, I explain it, and then all of a sudden I finally get them. I said, let's just try it. Just try
mm,
it, see what happens. And when we try it, boom, and I
yeah,
I treat, of all the things I treat in my practice, I treat a lot of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. Um,
Mm,
and but I don't see, and when I get people better, it can be very dramatic. When someone's not suicidal, when someone is just, they get rid of panic attacks. There's probably nothing that I see that's more dramatic than an adult who's never had ADD treated being treated for the first time. And
mm, yeah,
they come in and say, my friend told me about you or whatever, right? A psychologist, or or yeah, a friend gave me an Adderall when I was in college, and
right, right.
I said, how'd it help? Oh yeah, and it helped me with that test or whatever. So when I start teaching it more regularly, people are just blown away. They come in just shocked,
Mm,
and they look back in their lives and they say, "Oh my God, I realize now that I should have been treating this since I was younger, and
hmm
I could have done so much better, or I could have, achieved more." And I have a lot of patients who tell me that had I treated this, maybe I would have gone to college and I didn't, or maybe I would have gone to grad school and I
mm,
didn't, or I have a lot of
yeah.
people say that now that I knew this, I think I could do what I really planned on doing. And some people actually do. Some people actually do say, I think I can do school again. Another story I tell in my book is a guy who didn't get treated, and
Mm,
barely got out of high school, and as working at a desk at a company, and he's at the same desk 10 years later when he sees me at 28 years old. And I diagnose and treat him, and all of a sudden within the next year he has like three promotions at work. uh,
hmm
he decides he wants to go back to school. He wants to get a degree now, and he wants to get a business degree. So his parents come in with him, and hopefully I'm ruining the story. So if someone hasn't read my book yet, I'm ruining
mm,
the story. But the parents came in with him, and and I thought that the parents were going to come in and be mad at me for drugging their son. But the parents came in with him, and they're like, "Oh my God, we can't believe the difference in our son."
mm,
And then they said we feel horrible. We look back at those years ago when we listened to our friends, we went on the internet, we got bad advice, and now
hmm
we feel that we've held him back in life, and it's our fault now. And I tell them, I said, look, you couldn't help, you took bad advice, yeah, but you didn't know at the time. You thought you're doing what the best was for your son. The good news is he's still young enough to get on track with his career, and he's still, and so I try to make a positive out of it so they don't feel too guilty. But yeah, but
hmm
did they hold him back? Yeah, they did. And a lot
mm,
of people who get held back, they never get treatment because he was directed to see me by a friend of his who said, hey, you need to get this treated. And had he not, he probably never would. And most people, by the way, who have ADD never treat it. Most people. So though you're going to hear people say, "Oh, it's overdiagnosed," or "We're
hmm
giving too many stimulants out there." I
hmm
think the opposite. I think it's not diagnosed as much as it should be diagnosed. So I think
mm,
it's being undertreated. And unfortunately, I think the FDA and the federal government they I think they're holding back companies making the medication. I think this is why there's a shortage right now
mm,
of stimulants out there. People are having a hard time sometimes finding it because I think the federal government, from what I understand in my own research, is they're stepping in and trying to control the use of it. They're trying to
hmm
control the use of stimulants, which is really not a good move. And I wish the federal government would stay out of medicine, because federal agencies just do not do they just FDA, DEA, they don't do a good job when it comes to practicing medicine. You know,
yeah,
case in point, the pandemic and the vaccine. So
yeah, yeah. It's hard because I don't know how. I don't without getting political and all that stuff. Like I don't like the black hole that can be sometimes in conversation, but I do in general. It's like the larger that something is, the less comfortable I feel about it managing anything, and especially when it comes to my health. That's my own personal feelings about it. But the narrative around stimulants with those who have ADHD and actually have to get scripts every single month because it's a controlled substance, and how much shame there's involved because it can often feel like you're being treated like a drug addict, or that you're and it's like I don't want to feel wrong about this. Like there's something, I mean, I know when I first tried medication, it was like glasses for my brain, and it was this relief for the, I mean, it was, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, it was such a relief and it was so helpful. But that's not everything. It's a piece of the puzzle because it doesn't address like taking a stimulant doesn't help me with the other things that get like my anxiety. It can, maybe it's interrelated, but it's not a fix for the anxiety. It's not a fix for any shame that I may have, because that's a huge culprit that I see that comes in that was unexpected to me as like one of the biggest obstacles is really working with shame is such a nasty and sneaky like vermin and it's just hard to even see that that's at play. But this totally comes up in those co-working sessions because we're there to work. And it's just like if you're out, like that same anxiety, if a project is big or it's multi-parts or you feel overwhelmed, it's like all that stuff comes up in those rooms, in those sessions. And the it is a place like just creating a value for this is a place of non-judgment. And like I have this little chip that I don't know if it's my personality or my belief system or whatever it is, but I really am open and curious. Like I really believe that there's answers in someone's experience. So like when you try something and we're going around and we're reassessing, like how did this go? What'd you notice? Is really looking and being open and curious about what is there, so that you can like actually work with your life instead of like short circuiting either through shame or through that paralysis, overwhelming anxiety. And so it's just kind of we keep that shield in me and like this is a place to practice, try and experiment and try things so that you can discover what works for you. Because I mean, myself included in this, like the thing that also is prevalent in the experience that I have with my clients and in myself is the two big areas of our life, school and work. Like ADHD doesn't really fit there, and it doesn't really. It sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's punished a lot for not being able to do the things that other or I'm just working differently, and a lot of stuff that the way that they're doing it, I don't care about. Doesn't make sense. It's not engaging, and I'm checked out trying to talk to my friend Mark, or something. And so it sticks out like a sore thumb, and there's this experience that you're doing something wrong or you are wrong, and it's like a thing to recognize that in yourself and to like give yourself permission to not operate by shoulds or like what you think you should or what the world or culture is telling you should do.
Right.
Is I want to blast all of that away and give permission to find what really is useful and what works. But
Yep.
there's a whole layer of shame and anxiety, like
Yep.
subconscious stuff you got to work through to even kind of get to that. And the setup of those co-working sessions is that's like creating a little bubble where that stuff is not allowed in there,
Yep.
is really be open, really be curious and see what's there and go from there.
I like what you said about glasses for the brain. That's what I love that one. I'm going to use that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think though, see, I prescribe medications, but what I really appreciate is with what you do, with Melissa does is, drugs do a great job
Yeah,
with me, but there's other things, but there's, that you
right.
do with coaching, that she does with therapy. There's other
Yeah.
things that besides just the chemical part, but you also bring up a really, really good point about shame. And unfortunately, there's a lot of shame that comes with it, perpetuated by other
Mm.
people, very often pharmacists. Um,
That's the weird thing that you hear. It's not weird anymore. Have a comment is the terrible experience with a psychiatrist who has a stigma against ADHD, or another practitioner or another doctor in the way, and they won't subscribe
yep,
or prescribe stimulants, and their belief systems get in the way, and so it's just can create that kind of that perpetuate that something's wrong with you, or there's a moral failure, or it's wrong to try a stimulant. Like, and you can't compete when someone feels shame. It's
yep,
like, it just is. I think the executive function specifically of emotional regulation. I can't think of something that closes down the ability to regulate yourself more than anxiety and shame.
Yeah, and well, it can be shame from different people. It can be shame by people who
Yeah,
like, oh, what are you taking? Or you go into a doctor's office, you're taking this, you're taking Vyvanse, you're taking Adderall, or you go to a dentist and or just people like they look at you funny, like, oh, well,
yeah,
you might as well do meth on the street if you're gonna do that. Like,
right.
when I hear that,
Yeah.
it hurts me. But it's what gets to me the most is pharmacists. So you would think the people who are supposed to understand pharmaceuticals, that's their job. Their job is
Yeah,
to understand what they're prescribing. The fact that it comes from them a lot, or the people feel like that
yeah,
when they go in, they look at me a certain way. I know they're looking to me, or they give me a hassle because the way the rules are, it's a
yeah.
hassle because what we do, we have to send it every month through an electronic system. It can't be, there's no more paper prescriptions anymore for these medications. It has to be done electronically. You have to do the right timing because if we do it like a day or two early, they get all up, hot and bothered about it. And then
For real.
you got to let it down, tell them to send it in 2 days. It's like, okay, well, and then you get right to the end and you're almost out and before they give it to you. Or what happens is that that they say basically, well, we're going to get it in a week or two, and so then what happens often is that people start need to scramble.
Yeah,
What really gets to me with the
yeah,
stigma issue is that you can hear it from different people. So some of it is from parents who are ashamed that their college students have taken it upon themselves to get it treated, and then they find out and they're upset because they didn't want them treated before in the past, but then the college student went to see a doctor who worked with the pharmacist there, and they're getting it treated finally, and now the
mhm,
parents upset about it, or the friends of there, what's wrong with you, dude? Yeah, you got to take a stimulant. What are you getting high? Um,
right,
that's a
right.
problem. I mean, one thing that's really interesting about stimulants with ADD, they don't wire you, they calm the brain. So a lot of people will say
Mhm.
it helps with anxiety because it
Oh
helps
yeah,
has a calming effect on the brain. It doesn't I mean, if you go way too high in the dose, it might do that. But if you get the dose,
right.
it relaxes the brain. But yeah, but there's that, and then there is also
That's my experience. It's a weird experience that something, I mean, that was my experience where there's this slowing down or there's this syncing up that occurs. And it was like, I kind of likened it to, like, say you're standing on a train, like a ramp where there's a speeding train or whatever. And like normal life without a stimulant, it kind of is like, uh, while the train is going by, there's an advertisement in it. And unmedicated ADHD, it feels like trying to read that advertisement while the speeding train is going by. That's what it feels like. It's just like it's like they're going way too fast and I can't catch up to them. I know that they're happening, whatever. And then having a stimulant it feels like kind of getting on a parallel track on a train and it's speeding me up, but I'm catching up to that train where it slows things down and I can actually finally read it because I'm going the same speed. That's what it feels like to me, like the syncing up of it.
uh,
And so that was like a weird effect that I remember. It was just like, this feels so I can rest. I can kind of be at ease and not worry that I'm not reading everything, you know?
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, and lastly, when it comes to stigma, what really pisses me off the most is pharmacists because you would think the
Yeah,
people who are supposed to understand pharmaceuticals because they prescribe them, you would think that they
right,
they study them, but either they're not learning the right thing about them in school, or they
right.
get these opinions. But so when some people come in and they just get that kind of feeling at the pharmacy that they're looking at them funny, and it's just like this. And then some people just stop treating it because I just don't want to put up with that anymore. It's like it's really sad.
Yeah.
And
Well, I wonder how much, as you're saying that, like, even the fact that, like, it is such a difficult bureaucratic nightmare of a process that even for a pharmacist, there might be just the sheer, like, this sucks and I don't want to deal with it, which,
I know,
and I mean, if you're overloaded and then you get these other
I know.
fills of prescription that require double the time or all of these phone calls, they may just, I never thought about that before, but it could be the feeling of they're just pissed off that they have to do this too, you
And
know?
yeah, and if they don't have it at the pharmacy, then if someone's trying to call around to see if another pharmacy has it, they
Oh
say, well,
yeah.
I can't tell you. Well, wait a minute, what
Yeah.
do you mean I can't tell you? Well, we can't tell you over the phone. You have to come in. And like, what? I have to come in. I'm busy. I'm working. So
Oh my God.
it becomes really, especially in the last recent year or so, with this shortage thing that's going on. The shortage has really been since the pandemic. But
Yeah.
I thought that after the pandemic, that the companies would start catching up and manufacturing it better, but they haven't kept up with demand. But I really have a feeling it has to do with the FDA and the DEA stepping in and regulating. And I think part of it is that they think it's being overdiagnosed. There was
Hmm.
some pop up clinics and a sense telemedicine clinics that popped up during the pandemic, and so I think they were trying to shut those things down. So I think
Yeah.
what happened is, unfortunately now, there's not enough supply out there for people, and it becomes very
Right.
frustrating when you already have ADD and now you're missing days of it because you can't find
Oh,
it, and then it's not a good situation.
yeah.
I hope
It's not.
it fixes soon. You know.
Yeah, me too. It's such a nightmare that I know my own process and for clients too. I mean, you hear it everywhere. It's such a pain in the butt. Yeah.
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 But
Yeah.
so tell us before we got leave.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. But share with us how people can get a hold of you. How can they
Yeah.
get a hold of Melissa?
Yeah. So I go to ADHDcollective.com, and I'll say that we do those sessions, the co-working sessions. We have one free one on Wednesdays every single week, and it's indefinite. So if anybody listening to this wants to just try and see, just try that way of working and see what they notice, I invite you to come check it out. You'll just go to ADHDcollective.com, go to ADHD services, and then ADHD co-working sessions. You'll see a link, and then yeah, and there's also a contact. You can fill it out if you're interested in coaching. That includes co-working and 1 hour sessions where it's more personal, one-on-one. We're going to the details of your life and creating a plan for your week ahead of time. So that's if anybody's interested, please reach out, or if they have any questions or want to know more. That's great. Thank you for having me.
And to get a hold of Melissa, that you can get a hold of her the same way, or does she have a separate contact?
Yeah, Melissa Muller Therapy .com. That's the therapy website. There would be a link on ADHD Collective as well. But if anybody's interested in therapy or want to work through either shame, anxiety, or
Right,
those type of experiences, or go through the past and get
right.
some healing, and then encourage you to reach out to her.
It's Muller, it's Muller, by the way. So it's Melissa Muller, Muller, therapy.
Muller. Yeah, that's right.
So, but yeah, I thank you because this is such an important topic. It's so misunderstood.
Yes.
And I think it's one of these topics that we really need people to understand because treatment is so important. And if you don't treat it, you're going to get by in life, but you're going to get by, but you're not going to thrive. You're not going to get to where you really should be if you don't treat
Mm-hmm.
it. No matter how intelligent you are,
Mm-hmm.
you can always do better if you treat it. So if you
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I really appreciate it, Dr. Cronin.
thank you for coming on. Take
All
care.
right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
for me.
You too.
All
All right.
right.
Talk to you.